Chance's story. Dharma sobriety and my recovery are delightfully blended. The pivotal push to getting sober was a feeling of disconnection from my chosen family and from myself. An occasionally deep, often mild, haunting sensation of hindered intimacy. I wanted to show up and be truly me, meeting truly them, but there was always this cloudy curtain between us. When I was 11, I started with alcohol, and my mom was one of those, as long as it's at home, substance use is okay, kind of parents. I was 11 and a lot of my friends were 16, so you know we were drinking and driving, and then soon added pot, and acid, and mushrooms. I grew up in rural Ohio, and nature was a big part of my experience as a teen. We talked like we thought the substances brought us closer to nature and its beauty and mystery, but probably we would have gotten closer to the elements had we been sober and actually present. Either way, I was able to escape home and two parents who didn't talk, slept in separate beds, and yet supposedly were staying together for me, by zipping off and flying high with my crew. I also did a lot of drugs with my mom. She introduced me to cocaine, meth, and crack. Our shared dependence was a distorted parent-child closeness. She was, and still is, hurt and lonely. I excelled in my tiny Catholic high school. I was a perfectionist, took all the advanced classes, skipped a grade in French, wrote for the newspaper, pushed vegetarianism. I eventually graduated as the valedictorian. I'd jam all my homework during lunchtime so that I'd be free to check out as fully as possible from after school until bedtime with drugs. And that was the cycle, day after day. My queerness emerged early on. In 6th grade, I famously declared, when I grow up, I'm going to be bisexual, which to this day, I'm fully embodying. However, in small-town, sex-negative USA, this was easier said than done. When I became, at that time, a girl kissing girls, the hang-ups and harassing phone calls to our house line started happening. I never denied my desires or who I am, and I paid for it, but I never considered another way to be. I had a high school girlfriend when I was in 8th grade, and we partied and learned bodies. College and grad school were more of the same. Me working so hard and then rewarding myself at the end of the day and fuzzing out. More and more special people came into my life through queer, activist, and academic communities. I love relationship building, exploring, navigating, co-finding channels for growth and creativity, yet I felt the channels were blocked, and separation was apparent. In fall 2012, I decided my drinking was out of control. I had never really liked alcohol. Both of my parents were alcoholics and addicts, and I just couldn't be like them. So I cut out the alcohol because I thought that was the problem. Things definitely felt less chaotic and my body felt better, but the drugs continued. So much marijuana daily, plus MDMA and psychedelics often. The disconnection with my romantic partners was palpable, so I enacted a sober sex-only policy for myself and my dates. I learned quite a bit about queerness, presence, and substances then. Many people couldn't easily set aside drinks and/or drugs in preparation for sex. These early negotiations around substances and physicality were significant. They were empowering, and I was able to practice directness and consent. Yet stopping at sober sex wasn't enough. After 6 months of the policy, the same 6 months on gender-affirming hormone therapy, I went on a trip to Las Vegas with a sex worker collective I was part of. And, while I didn't know that it would be the last time, I took my last dose of drugs in the desert. The next day was my dad's birthday, not an uncomplicated date, and that became my sobriety anniversary. I stopped because I had had enough. On that desert walk in my altered state, alone but with others, I just thought about how I could get to so many of these same places with my meditation practice and so much less clinging and opacity. I was in the middle of a 90 and 90 meditation challenge I was doing with a Dharma buddy, where we would meditate 90 minutes a day for 90 days. I was committed, and I was ready for change. Upon abstaining, I had a built-in network of sober friends from my meditation community, which held a lot of sober punks. At the same time, it felt like a magnificent shift and very organic. It was simple, but not easy. I lost friends. I broke up with most of my romantic relationships. A lot of people asking, why? You don't have a problem. You never seemed like things got out of control, etc., etc. This still happens, and I'm celebrating my 10-year soberversary. Getting sober required a lot of release. Staying sober requires doing all the ancillary work, in addition to being active in a recovery community. Dharma, sangha, honesty, connection, communication, compassion, rupture, repair. This one-line string of words and principles encapsulates an ever-challenging life practice of being a better person and causing less harm and bringing more joy into the world. I'm extremely grateful to be embedded in a community that can reflect back these values while we all stumble trustfully together. I am one of the stewards of our first NYC area Queer Recovery Dharma meeting, and it's truly magic. Queer and trans people healing together on this path, we especially need each other, and this space where we can process shared experience and difficulties. Service has always been a large part of my recovery. Whether I was an inter-sangha rep or events chair organizing day-long retreats, and my favorite, the New Year's Eve gathering, meeting chair, mentor, wise friend, meeting location finder and conduit, showing up, opening up, being an anchor, feeling anchored by others, and holding space is central to nourishing the group's collective health and continuation. I like this saying that I've heard from a few Dharma teachers: don't waste your suffering. For me, this points to the power of transformation in the Eightfold Path. It's especially supportive because it's not a consecutive sequence. To me, the Dharma is kaleidoscopic. Each little bit of the path catches and mirrors back countless other pieces of the path. I've spent a lot of time tuning into ethics, known as Sila in Pali, the 3 stages along the Eightfold Path: right speech, right action, and right livelihood. Growing up, I received messages that it was okay to screw other people over to get ahead. This ethos ran deep, and I've had to, and continue to do a lot of undoing and behavioral remodeling work. I don't waste the suffering that can be transmuted when I am tempted to, or act in an unskillful way and catch myself. I check how my body and heart feel, note it, and investigate those qualities. I also try not to beat myself up and instead practice self-compassion. And when I choose a skillful action, I feel into the gratitude and joy, how it emerges in my body, and I try to expand that. A big part of staying sober has also been handling loss. A couple years ago, my ex-partner died from addiction. They weren't only my ex-partner, but they were one of my strongest recovery inspirations when I was in early sobriety. Together, we founded the group that would later become Recovery Dharma NYC. I'm still taking advice they shared when we were in each other's lives. And I'm heartbroken that the pull of escaping with substances overpowered their ability to take one of their own pieces of advice that they gave me after they started using again. It's much easier to stay sober than to get sober. They told me they struggled with presenting as trans feminine in the world while sober. The frequent affronts of harassment, rage, rudeness, and microaggressions were heavy to handle. As a trans masculine person, I have experienced much of this myself, and I know that transphobia is amplified against trans feminine people. I'm also grateful that myself and many other trans and gender diverse people have found continued strength and clarity in sobriety and support from our practices and networks to keep going. I love you. Keep going. This is a meta phrase that was passed down from a Dharma teacher years back, one that appears often in my reflections. I, like all beings, am deserving of love, including my own love. It all starts there. I will persist and resist the narratives and attacks against trans people, especially in this time when there is an intensely targeted political attack on our existence. I am training to face reality and to see it for what it is. Here are some snapshots of my practice. Every day I sit down to meditate. Maybe it's 45 minutes or 5 minutes or somewhere in between. I heard a teacher once say that even just paying attention to one breath counts. After I meditate, I recite the 5 remembrances or listen to monks chanting them in a video online. I am of the nature to grow old. There is no escaping growing old. I am of the nature to get sick. There is no escaping sickness. I am of the nature to die. There is no escaping death. Everyone and everything I love are of the nature to change, and there is no escaping separation from them. My actions are my only belongings. I cannot escape their consequences. They are the ground upon which I stand. Next, I recite 1 round of classic meta phrases. I close my sit with taking refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. I build on my daily sitting and life practice with residential practice periods. I do at least one 7 to 10 day silent meditation retreat per year. This year, I did my first metta retreat, and it was incredibly fruitful. Plus, spend a week at a Thai forest Buddhist monastery. I'm grateful for the opportunities for these extended, dedicated practice periods, and believe that they have contributed immensely to expanding and strengthening wisdom, balance, and heartfulness. I'm still continuing to identify impermanence, anicca, ungovernability, anatta, and unsatisfactoriness, dukkha, and the ways in which I relate to them, and I don't doubt that these will be lifelong tasks. But I'm seeing them a lot more and clearer, and this naturally has made recovery more attainable and intoxication much less desirable. Escaping doesn't lead to lasting happiness. In fact, in my experience, it just prolongs and sometimes solidifies whatever I'm trying to get away from. The benefits of being in touch with these 3 marks of existence are many. Increased appreciation and presence, awareness of the vast webs and chains of interdependence, and a letting be of things being what I want and how I want them. Recovery Dharma has kept me rooted and rejoicing. You can read another iteration of my story in the Transcending Trans Buddhist Voices anthology.